The hero's main feat is to overcome the monster of darkness. It is a long hoped for and expected triumph of consciousness over the unconscious. Carl Jung. In the end, the ego can never achieve the final victory of light over darkness, of love over hate, of cosmic consciousness over the collective unconscious. Why? Because the ego exists as a boundary, a division between the conscious and unconscious. The showdown between light and dark can never truly happen so long as the light, in the desperate attempt to maintain its integrity, refuses to enter the dark. Paradoxically, this refusal is maintained by the idea that the light must fight against the dark. The fight comes from duality, from separation, from fear, and yet the fight is necessary. The integrity of the light must exist to, paradoxically, give itself over in sacrificial love to the dark. This sacrifice, this submersion of the undying light to the dark, again paradoxically, results in the spiritual victory of light over darkness. The life of Jesus is a story of this process, and yet for whatever reason, the ego-enhancing qualities of Western civilization perhaps, the Western religious traditions have refused to give up the fight, to resist no more. The West's moral and spiritual growth has been stunted by the burden of ego consciousness. The realization of the unconditional love of Jesus, the pinnacle of moral attainment, escapes most people in Western Christendom due to the dualistic power of ego consciousness, a consciousness instinctually tied to the body and the mind. For this reason, the West must turn east to revivify its religious traditions, to give intellectual rigor to its highest moral ideals through Eastern paradoxical thinking, and to give spiritual energy to its deadened rituals and symbols through Eastern meditative practices that tap into deep well springs within the personal and collective unconscious. Carl Jung explains, the clearest expression of this is the Christian reformation of the Jewish concept of the deity. The morally ambiguous Yahweh became the exclusively good God, while everything evil was united with the devil. It seems as if the development of the feeling function in Western man forced a choice on him which led to a moral splitting of the divinity into two halves. In the East, the predominantly intuitive intellectual attitude left no room for feeling values, and the gods, Kali is a case in point, could retain their original paradoxical morality undisturbed. In the Western tradition, evil is not only split off from the good, but the good itself is pushed onto an otherworldly Father in heaven, a result of a highly developed but still dualistic ego consciousness. Such splitting has caused no small amount of suffering in the history of Western civilization. As mentioned, the repression of darkness only makes it more terrible and insidious. The collective shadow, repressed in part by the Christian tradition, has manifested in terrible ways, for example Nazi Germany, due to Western man's inability to integrate the darkness with the light, the inability to see one's own shadow, and the unconscious desire to project that shadow onto some metaphysical other, the devil, or an actual other, the Jews in the case of the Nazis, is a necessary consequence of the mind and culture created split between man's conscious ego and unconscious instincts. Meanwhile, in India, the mystical strain of ego dissolution is much stronger, baked as it is into the very fabric of Indian culture and Indian religion. The Indian yogi consciously works with the unconscious, using meditation and yoga to enter and sometimes completely erase the chaotic instinctual multitude of the personal and perhaps even collective unconscious. This process of maintaining detached conscious awareness while simultaneously releasing the unconscious controlling mechanism of the ego allows the yogi to fall into the dream world of the unconscious while maintaining a poised wakefulness. The yogi does not seek to escape the wonder and horror of his dual and paradoxical nature. Instead, he dives into himself, exploring the depths and heights until he finds that ultimately he does not exist, that he is nothing, and that in fact nothing, he is everything. He becomes God. Carl Jung writes, the West is always seeking to uplift, but the East seeks a sinking or deepening. The European seeks to raise himself above this world, while the Indian likes to turn back into the maternal depths of nature. Have a good one, guys. Namaste.